We all want to succumb to temptation. We fantasize about seducing our partners and being seduced ourselves. But when faced with the reality of intimacy, we freeze. We don't understand why we can't act on our desires, even when we've been thinking about them all day. We blame ourselves and think that we don't have what it takes to become skilled lovers. But I believe that if you can understand your sex drive and how you get turned on, you can begin carving a roadmap of desire for you and your future relationships. If you're new here, my name is Lillian, and I'm here to help guide you through your love life and your sex life. If that turns you on, then like and subscribe. I've recently read Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, and in it she gives us an entirely new way of thinking about desire. Most of us think of sexual desire as spontaneous. You see a really hot guy walking down the street, or think about the last time you saw your boyfriend in between your sheets, and suddenly you want sex. Like a lightning bolt, you're turned on at just the anticipation of pleasure. And for some of us, that's true. Desire is unplanned and can hit us at the slightest provocation. But for others, desire is less like a bolt of lightning and more like an ember that needs time to be stoked into flame. These people only want sex when something sexy is happening, when their lover is massaging them and kissing them, taking the time to turn them on. That marks two vastly different approaches to desire. One type is spontaneous and the other is responsive. Both types are normal and healthy. So, how do you identify your approach to desire? And how do you begin building a roadmap to reaching it? First, you have to understand what desire is and how it functions in our bodies. So, what is desire? Desire is the mental or emotional state of wanting sex. It can be spontaneous or it can be responsive and only emerge after being triggered. Now, desire is mental and emotional. It is not the physical state. Arousal, on the other hand, is the physical response to stimulation. That includes increased heart rate, shallow breathing, getting wet, or getting it hard. Most people would think that one naturally follows the other. For example, you start imagining the last time you and your partner made love, and as a result, the blood starts to rush to your face. You get really hot and you start to blush. That would be desire leading to arousal. But it's also possible to become aroused before desire. Like if your partner were to walk up to you, kiss you on your neck, and caress the small of your back. He's waking up your body so that he can open up your mind. So, desire is feeling like you want to do something sexual, and arousal is when your body actually starts to get excited. Now that we understand what desire is, how does it work? You can think of desire, the mental part of sexuality, as a system of accelerators and brakes. The accelerators are what gets you excited. They're noticing all of the sex-related information in your environment. Everything you see or touch or hear, and also everything you're thinking has the potential to turn you on. It functions completely unconsciously and is on all of the time. The only reason we aren't constantly overwhelmed by those sexual impulses is because of our brakes, which are noticing all of the reasons why you shouldn't be aroused. It's taking in the dirty room and the children running around the house and saying, I don't feel comfortable with having sex right now. Most people think that their problem with desire is that there's a lack of acceleration. But we just learned that the accelerator is always on and is always taking in our surroundings. So, our problem isn't with wanting sex, because we're constantly open to a state of arousal. The actual problem is that there is too much pressure on the brakes. And what's turning on the brakes are usually things like stress or having a negative body image. So, instead of only following advice like buy more lingerie or read a romance novel, which puts more pressure on the gas pedal, try identifying and managing your sexual brakes. Now, it isn't enough to know that you have this system inside of you. You also have to learn how sensitive you are to stimulation, because it's your level of sensitivity that is going to determine your desire type. I found 2 separate tests to help you determine how sensitive you are to sexual stimulation. The first is provided by the Flow app, and the second comes from the source material. They're described as being more like Cosmo quizzes than they are exact sciences, but they're fun and can be helpful in determining how desire shows up for you. The first quiz is a true or false quiz. You're going to note whether you select mostly true or false in each section and tally your results at the end. The first section will measure your responsive desire, and the second is your spontaneous desire. Feel free to pause the video on the next screen and tally your score. Let's tally your scores. If you answered mostly true in the first section, then you have a responsive desire type. If you answered true in the second, your desire type is spontaneous. If you had multiple trues in both rounds, then you probably find yourself experiencing a combination of spontaneity and response. While if you answered mostly false in both rounds, you probably experience what you feel is a low sex drive and have a harder time accessing desire and arousal. The second test requires you to rate how you relate to each question on a scale of 0 to 4. 0 being, I don't relate to this at all, and 4 being, this is exactly like me. At the end of the test, you're going to add all of those numbers up and see what you get out of a total of 20. Again, feel free to pause or screenshot the quiz so that you have time to think about the questions and tally your score. Let's go through your answers together. If you scored 0 to 6, then you aren't super sensitive to all of the reasons you shouldn't be having sex right now. You aren't shy or sexually conservative, and you really aren't hindered by a negative body image. Your main problem is actually holding yourself back and reining in all of that sexual energy. Staying aware of potential consequences and taking the time to ask yourself, do I really want this? Can help with that. If you have a score between 7 to 13, that means that the amount of pressure on your brakes has more to do with context, meaning that a riskier situation like sleeping with a new partner might increase your concerns about safety or feeling sexy, while contexts that are familiar and comfortable easily arouse you. Take note that anytime you feel stressed or depressed or exhausted will activate your brakes and reduce your response to sexual cues. If you have a score between 14 and 20, you have very sensitive brakes, And sensitive breaks are a top indicator for problems like having a low interest in sex or difficulties having an orgasm. If you feel pressured or rushed in any way, your desire tanks. So you're going to need to feel completely relaxed and safe in order to become aroused. Now, let's measure your accelerators. If you have a score of 0 to 6, that shows us that you aren't very sensitive to sex-related stimuli. It takes time and effort to feel sexy. A person with slow accelerators may even feel like they relate to asexual identities, but just because desire doesn't magically happen for you doesn't mean you have no interest in sex. You can be in a healthy, sexually satisfying relationship and not crave sex out of the blue. It just means your brain requires more stimulation to cross the threshold into active desire. You would probably benefit from a daily practice that allows you to sink into your body and recognize the physical and mental cues that turn you on. A practice like this usually looks like solo time with a vibrator, where you have no one to impress and no one to pressure you into rushing the process of getting to know your body. If you score 7 to 13, then you are right in the middle, and your sensitivity depends on the context it presents itself in. If the situation is romantic and hot, then you are ready for sex. But if it isn't hot, then neither are you. Scoring between 14 to 20 can signal a tendency towards hypersexuality. You respond quickly to sex-related stimuli, but not to the potential threats. So you're easily turned on, but have a hard time turning off. You find new partners exciting and think of risk as an adventure, which sounds fun, but can also give you a sense of feeling like you're out of control of your sexuality. Yeah, you have more novel experiences, but you also walk out of some of them thinking, why did I do that? Now that you know your desire type, you can intentionally create the situations that turn you on. Now, high or low, spontaneous or responsive, most people aren't on either ends of the extremes. Most of us aren't hypersexual, and we aren't asexual either. Most people are right in the middle, and our ability to get turned on depends on context, and most of that context has nothing to do with sex itself. For most people, the perfect context for amazing sex is simply having a low stress and highly affectionate environment. Here is how you're going to look for the context that create that environment for you. I want you to think of a positive sexual experience from your past and describe it in as many details as possible. Think about your partner's characteristics, the relationship characteristics, where it took place, what love languages were expressed, all of the things that created a positive experience for you. And then do the same thing with a negative sexual experience. The couples who maintain a long-term sexual connection co-create a context that allows both of their brains to have access to pleasure. So, try to identify 5 things that you and your partner can do to make it easier to access the right context for great sex. But if your life doesn't currently allow for the context that creates spontaneous desire, that's okay. And you're okay too. You can continue to enjoy responsive desire until you can build a life that allows for a little spontaneity. What I mentioned in this video is only a piece of what the book offers. I recommend you buy the book and read it for yourself. It even comes with a companion workbook to guide you. If you learned something about yourself today, then like and subscribe, and we can continue to explore your body together. I love you. Goodbye.
Je te glisse entre les doigts. 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 Réveille-toi. Je te glisse entre les